Richie here with your primetime games for week 2 of college football. The games that start 7:30 and later. Biggest one of the day, LSU versus Texas. LSU quarterback Joe Burrow against Georgia Southern. He went 23 of 27 for 278, 5 touchdown passes. They held Georgia Southern to 98 total yards. This is a Georgia Southern team that won 10 games last year. And has usually one of the top rushing offenses in the country. Then you got Texas, who beat Louisiana Tech 45-14. Sam Ehlinger, 276 passing, 4 touchdowns. This should be a really interesting game. Good offenses both sides, pretty good defenses. You know, all the talent all around this. You have like 20 players in this game get drafted at some point. But that'll be a great game to watch. I'm not sure who to go with here. UT Martin 1AA taking on Florida. Florida, they had the game 2 weeks ago against Miami. Franks struggled, didn't look good. They did win, but Franks was 254, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, 1 rushing. They only had 50 rushing yards, but their defense was great. They had 10 sacks. Yes, it's against Miami's. They had 3 freshmen starting in their offensive line, but I expect their defense to be good. Franks, who knows? Maybe we'll see Emory Jones, the backup quarterback for in this game, but they shouldn't struggle too much with this one. Nevada taking on Oregon, a weird game. Nevada, they were down 31-14 to Purdue the other day. Then they came back and won 34-31. Quarterback Carson Strong for Nevada, passed for 295 and 3 touchdowns. Then you got Oregon on the flip side this weekend. They were up 21-6 on Auburn in a big game, and they lost at the last second to Auburn. They lost Auburn 27-21. Justin Herbert, 241 passing, 1 rushing touchdown. They only had 90 rushing yards. The defense allowed 206 rushing yards. I thought Oregon would win. I thought Oregon would be better this year. I mean, they can still be good. It's not like a loss. Auburn's not terrible, I guess. But this game's tricky. Oregon has to... Nevada's good enough to compete with Oregon, at least for a while. And as the old adage goes, Oregon shouldn't let Auburn beat them twice, right? They should get this Auburn game out of mind, focus on Nevada. Nevada can be dangerous, and they proved it against Purdue. Buffalo taking on Penn State. Buffalo had a pretty good first game. They played Robert Morris. They had 285 rushing yards. They won 38-10. Not a whole lot to say, just kind of hum-ho. Penn State hung 79 points in their opponent versus Idaho. Now, I don't expect them to do that against Buffalo, but they hung 79. Quarterback Sean Clifford passed for 282 touchdowns and ran for 57. Running back Devin Ford ran for 107 and a touchdown. They had 331 rushing yards as a team. Wide receiver KJ Hamler had 4 receptions, 115, and 2 touchdowns, and their defense had 7 sacks. I don't think they'll hang up 79. Buffalo could keep it close for a quarter or so, but I'm kind of leaning Penn State here. Tulane taking on Auburn. This is an intriguing one to me. Tulane, you know, they put up 350 rushing yards against Florida International. Quarterback Justin McMillan passed for 199, 2 touchdowns, ran for 51 yards and a touchdown. They have a really strong running game. Auburn's defense, yes, it's good. They are talented, blah, blah, all that bullshit. Don't look past Tulane. Auburn, they were down 21-6 against Oregon. They came back and won. Freshman Bo Nix, he was 13 of 31 for 177, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. He had the 2 picks early. He came back. The completion percentage is not good. He'll get that up. Running back Jatarvius Whitlow ran for 110. If they don't take this game seriously, Tulane could put a huge scare into them. But so keep an eye on that for a little bit anyway. All right, then this one's interesting to me. Western Michigan, one of the MAC favorites, taking on Michigan State. John Wasting, the quarterback for Western Michigan, he was hurt part of last year. He came back, yes, it's against Monmouth, but he passed for 368, 5 touchdowns. Wide receiver Deshaun Bussell, 5 catches, 116. They only had 90 rushing yards in the game, but they were passing all over the place. Or on the flip side, Michigan State, they have a really strong defense, maybe the best in the nation, but they struggled against Tulsa. Yes, they won 28-7, but they had 6 sacks. They held Tulsa to minus 73 rushing yards, which is a school record. Part of that, Tulsa had a few few snaps go past the guy, and they lost a lot of yards. Michigan State had a safety, and they had a fumble return for a touchdown, right? So that's 9 points there, and they had 28. So they really only scored 19 points on offense. And against a team like Western Michigan that could potentially put up some points, they might need more. This could be a real possible upset. I could be way off. I was kind of off this weekend with some shit. Michigan State could kill it, but it's another game. Keep an eye on for a little bit. Brian Lew, rookie, the quarterback for Michigan State, 192 passing, 1 rushing. They only had 108 rushing yards against Tulsa. So, that's an intriguing one. Eastern Michigan taking on Kentucky. Eastern Michigan, they won their first game, a close game against Coastal Carolina, 30-23. Quarterback Mike Glass III, he was 20 of 22. That's crazy. That's 188 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, plus 1 rushing. So he had 3 passing touchdowns and only 2 incompletions. He had more touchdown passes than incompletions. Their defense had 4 interceptions. They're going to need that if they want to beat Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky's as good this year. And they did struggle early against a good Toledo team from the MAC Conference. Quarterback Terry Wilson passed for 246 and 2 touchdowns. They had 176 rushing yards as a team. They had 4 sacks as a team, but they did win 38-24. Toledo's a good offense. Eastern Michigan's not quite as good in an offense, but with a quarterback like this, Mike Glass, dude, if he can, I know it's hard going 20 for 22. Probably he won't do that again. But Kentucky, I'm kind of leaving Kentucky here, but again, another one, maybe keep an eye on the first quarter to see how it goes. All right, an early SEC matchup, Arkansas Razorbacks against Ole Miss. You got Arkansas, they struggled against 1AA Portland State, but they did win 20-13. However, the quarterback situation, they have quarterback Ben Hicks, who's a transfer from SMU, who used to play under Chad Morris, the head coach for Arkansas when Chad Morris was at SMU. And another, Nick Starkel came in from Texas A&M. Ben Hicks was only 14 of 29 a game. They were saved by their running back Rakeem Boyd from Last Chance U a couple years ago. Ran for 114 and a touchdown. They did run for 204 yards rushing. Their defense had 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, kept them winning the game. Ole Miss was upset by Memphis 15-10, which I thought may happen. Their quarterback Matt Corral was only 9 of 19 for 93 yards, 1 pick. They only had 173 yards. I don't know who's going to win. They're about even, I think. They're both not very good right now. I'm kind of still leaning Ole Miss just because Rich Rodriguez, that offense, I feel like he'll get it going at some point. But this is very, very even game, or even early SEC matchup. All right, 1AA Stony Brook taking on Utah State. Utah State had a heartbreaker. They were back and forth with Wake Forest. They were in field goal range, down 3, and Jordan Love, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, threw an interception. And he lost that one 38-35. Jordan Love, he passed for 416, 3 touchdowns, but he did throw 3 picks, and he only threw 6 interceptions all last year. So he threw half of them right now. They had running back Jaylen Warren run for 141 and a touchdown. COC Manor, 8 receptions, 118 yards and a touchdown. 8 receptions, 118 yards and a touchdown. And I think they bounced back with there. All right, Liberty, they took on Syracuse. So I thought they would upset them. They were shut out 24-0, but there's a little more going on than I thought. Head coach Hugh Freeze, he was in the press box. He had a herniated disc. He was coaching from a bed. They had a bed in the press box, and he was calling plays, coaching, and they lost. And really, they lost 24-0, but they still kept it pretty close. Their offense couldn't get going. Quarterback Stephen Buckshot Calvert passed for 234, but he threw 2 interceptions. Really, the only thing Liberty had going for him, one of the best wide receivers maybe in the country, in Antonio Gandy Golden. He had 6 catches for 119 yards. Their team had -4 rushing yards, so they couldn't keep it close. And Louisiana Lafayette, on the flip side, they lost to Mississippi State, but they looked good. They kept it close. They lost 38-28, and it was back and forth all game. Mississippi State scored a field goal late in the game to go up those 10 points. Really, it was like back and forth, 7 points all game. Quarterback Levi Lewis passed for 267, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and ran for 1. They ran for 163 yards as a team. Wide receiver Jamal Bell, 8 receptions, 113. I do think this could be a shootout if, Hugh Freeze can get back on there. I think Liberty, their offense will be fine. Louisiana Lafayette's offense is clearly pretty good. This should be a pretty interesting game. All right, next we got a Houston team taking on 1AA Prairie View. Houston, they lose their first week to Oklahoma, 49-31, but they're one of the better teams in the group of 5. They have one of the best quarterbacks, I think, in the country anyway. Derek King, he was kind of stopped early on, but he got things going. He did pass for 167 yards and 2 touchdowns, and he ran for 103 yards and a touchdown as they amassed 241 rushing yards in that game. They did allow 686 yards against a good Oklahoma team, but they had 408 yards of offense themselves, and should make quick work of Prairie View as Houston goes on to try to maybe win the American, maybe sneak into a New Year's Six Bowl. You got Miami taking on North Carolina. Miami a couple of weeks ago lost in a close game to the Gators. They lost 24-20, but their redshirt freshman quarterback Jaron Williams actually looked pretty good. Passed for 214, a touchdown. He didn't turn over. He got sacked a lot of times, 10 sacks. He got 16 tackles for loss in that game. Florida had against Miami. So they got to figure out their offensive line situation, but DJ Dallas is a good running back. They got the players, and I actually really like their quarterback. Against North Carolina, who Mac Brown's back on the sideline, head coaching North Carolina. They were actually down 20-9 versus South Carolina. Then they came back to win 24-20. Their freshman quarterback Sam Howell, one of the top recruits in the country, he passed for 245, 2 touchdowns. He led them on a 95 and 98 yard touchdown drives to come back to win. Running back Javonte Williams ran for 102. They ran for 238, and Miles Wolfolk, defensive back, had 2 interceptions late to help seal the game. So actually, both teams' final scores are 24-20, but one loss and one won. This game is very even. I feel like as a Florida fan, I like the Hurricanes. The only Florida team I don't like are the Seminoles. But I'm kind of leaning towards Miami just because maybe the overall talent. But this game could end 24-20 again. These teams can't get out of that. So that's a very interesting early ACC matchup. UTEP taking on Texas Tech. UTEP struggled versus an FCS team, Houston Baptist, who was only 1-10 last year. UTEP did win 36-34. Quarterback Brandon Jones passed for 268, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, ran for 33 and a touchdown. Running back Trayvon Hughes ran for 144 and 2 touchdowns. They had 240 rushing, so maybe they can get a running game going. But Texas Tech, first game with Coach Wells from Utah State. They went all over. I think it was Montana State. They won like 45-10. Quarterback Alan Bowman was 40-55 for 436 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Utah transfer Armin Shine ran for 125 yards and a touchdown. They had 250 rushing yards as a team. Wide receiver Xavier White had 5 receptions, 107 and a touchdown. They had 691 yards of offense, and expect that to continue. Tulsa taking on San Jose State. Tulsa, they kept it close for a little bit against Michigan State. They lost 20-7. Their Baylor transfer quarterback Zach Smith passed for 153 to 1 touchdown, 1 pick. They had a lot of negative yards rushing, a bunch of sacks allowed. Who knows with this? San Jose State, they beat their FCS opponent last week, Northern Colorado, 35-18. Quarterback Josh Love passed for 224 and 2 touchdowns. They had 158 rushing yards. Their defense had 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. This is kind of an even game. San Jose State wasn't one of the worst teams in the country last year. Tulsa kind of was, but they kind of go in and out over the last 10 to 15 years. They'll go in and out of becoming bowl eligible or whatever. So if either team wants to try to get a bowl, if Tulsa wants to make their way back in, if San Jose State can get their second win of the year, that means they're only 4 away. Maybe they can chalk and become bowl eligible. This is a pretty even game. Arkansas State taking on UNLV. Arkansas State lost 37-30 to Southern Methodist in what I thought would be a shootout, and it was. Quarterback Logan Bonner for Arkansas State passed for 324 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick, and all 4 of those touchdown passes went to wide receiver Omar Biglis, who had 10 receptions, 132 yards and 4 touchdowns. They're taking on UNLV. UNLV, they beat Southern Utah 56-23. Their quarterback, Armani Rogers, passed for 144 and a touchdown and ran for 114 yards and 2 touchdowns. Running back Charles Williams ran for 143 and 3 touchdowns. They had 331 rushing yards, I believe it was. Defense had 4 sacks. I expect this to be another shootout in UNLV, Arkansas State. It should get some, I don't know, like another 37-30 kind of shootout there. Fun game to watch. All right, an early Pac-12 conference game. California taking on Washington. California upset Washington last year, playing really strong defense. I think the final was like 12-10 or something like that. Cal struggled in their first game against UC Davis. They were down 10-0, but then they came back and won 27-13. Quarterback Chase Garbus passed for 238, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Christopher Brown had a great game, 197 yards and a touchdown, and their defense only allowed 83 rushing yards. And if they want to beat Washington again, they got to rely on that defense, and it seems like this running back, Christopher Brown, if he can keep Washington's offense off the field. Washington normally has a really good defense as well, but Washington, they beat Eastern Washington 47-14 with Georgia transfer Jacob Eason. All he did was throw for 349 yards, 4 touchdowns. They had 200 rushing yards. They had 4 sacks. That's kind of an interesting game. I'm kind of leaning towards Washington there. But now the next team, Stanford, USC. Stanford, they beat Northwestern 17-7, and it was 10-7 with 20 seconds to go. Stanford got a fumble return for a touchdown to go up that. Quarterback KJ Costello for Stanford. He was 16 of 20, 152 yards, 1 touchdown, but he was hurt. He may not play this game. Running back Cameron Scarlett ran for 97 yards. The defense held Northwestern to 210 total yards, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, plus that touchdown. As they won 17-7, they're taking on USC, who also got their quarterback hurt. So you probably will have 2 backup quarterbacks starting in this game for both teams. And USC, they struggled against Fresno. They won 31-23. Fresno was coming back. JT Daniels was hurt. Before he was hurt, he passed for 215, a touchdown and a pick, but he may not play. Running back Vaiva Malapia ran for 134 yards and a touchdown. Wide receiver Tyler Vaughns had 11 receptions for 150 yards. Kick returner Velus Jones had a 100-yard kick return TD, which ended up being the difference in the game as they won by 8. Their defense, USC's defense, allowed 206 rushing yards and allowed 462 total yards to Fresno. I'm kind of leaning USC here just because Stanford, at least USC, even when the guy got hurt, they have a clear running game. I mean, Stanford usually plays decent defense and have a running back, but I mean, this is the early Pac-12 game, and it could go a long way to determining who plays in the Pac-12 title game. All right, Minnesota Golden Gophers taking on Fresno State. Minnesota struggled against South Dakota State, even though they won 20-21. They were down in that game and they came back. Quarterback Tanner Morgan, he was 13 of 18, 176, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Wide receiver Rashawn Bateman, 5 receptions, 132 yards and a touchdown. And their defense actually allowed 174 rushing yards. And that's significant because Fresno State has a pretty good, decent offense. They had a close loss to USC. Quarterback Jorge Reyna passed for 256, 2 touchdowns and a pick, and ran for 88 yards. They ran for 206 rushing yards. And their defense forced 4 turnovers. So Minnesota gave up 174 rushing yards against 1AA South Dakota State, and Fresno ran for 206 yards against a probably more talented USC team than Minnesota. So Minnesota, this could be, I think Minnesota might be favored. This could be an upset of sorts. If Fresno wins, it'll at least be even. All right, 1AA Northern Arizona taking on Arizona. Arizona hasn't played in 2 weeks. They lost to Hawaii a couple of weeks ago, 45-38. Khalil Tate got tackled at the 1-yard line with no time left, and they lost. Khalil Tate he threw for 361 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, and ran for 108 yards. They had 178 rushing yards. They had 4 interceptions in the game, and I think they bounced back here. All right, the final game of the night. It's a midnight start for the East Coast because it's in Hawaii. Oregon State taking on Hawaii. Oregon State kept with Oklahoma State pretty well. They lost 52-36, but they did put up the 36 points. Jake Luton, the quarterback for Oregon State, passed for 251, 3 touchdowns. They had 167 rushing yards. Wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins had 9 receptions, 170, and 2 touchdowns. They had 448 total yards. However, their defense allowed 555 yards and 352 rushing, and that's significant because Hawaii has one of the best offenses in the nation. They did beat Arizona a couple of weeks ago, 45-38. Quarterback Cole McDonald passed for 378, 4 touchdowns, and 4 picks. That was through about 3 quarters. He got pulled because he kept throwing the interceptions. If he can get that down, which he only threw 10 all last year, if he can get that down, he could very well win another Pac-12 game. It's always hard to travel to Hawaii. They had 159 rushing yards in that game. Wide receiver Cedric Bird for Hawaii went off. 14 receptions, 224 yards, and 4 receiving touchdowns. They had 595 total yards, but they did allow 539 in that game. In Oregon State, put up about 450. I expect another shootout here. I'm not sure who to go with yet, but I expect another one. So those are our primetime games for Week 2 college football. Like, subscribe to all my stuff, and come back, please. Peace.